Hello and welcome to Fulham Folklore. Today we are looking back at Tom Cairney's 10 years at Fulham because, of course, on Monday it was announced that he has signed a new one-year contract extension which will take him to 11 years at Fulham Football Club. He joined in 2015. He will be here until 2026. We haven't done a Fulham Folklore in a while, but it felt right to remember one of Fulham's longest serving players, the longest serving of this century, with a special podcast looking back at Tom's time at Fulham FC. I am joined by Elizabeth Barnard. Hello.
Hi, Sammy. How are you?
Good, thank you. And Jack Kelly. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Well, look, we made a bit of a change because we were planning on doing a Jack and Joe show. There wasn't a load of transfer rumours to dive into. So we thought, look, let's change this up. Let's have a full podcast kind of celebrating Tom, because it's a phenomenal achievement to do 10 years at any football club. But for Fulham, this hasn't happened since the 90s, that anyone's done 10 seasons. And now the fact that Tom will be going over 10 seasons, it only feels right to kind of look back at Tom's time and what a roller coaster of a time it's been. I thought I'd start though. We all maybe saw the interview that he did with the club as he announced 10 years into 11 years at Fulham. But what was Tom's first interview with the club? Funnily enough, it was with the same interviewer as well, Jeff Prues. Here is a little snippet of Tom just days after he joined Fulham FC.
And was it an easy decision?
Yeah, I think it was an easy decision. Fulham just been out of the Premier League 1 year. I mean, it's over the years they've had some good players, and I've always enjoyed watching the style of football. So, saying that I've had a great 2 seasons at Blackburn, and thank them for everything they've done for me, and I had a great time. But it's a new chapter and one I'm excited for.
So, Jack, it's interesting there. Neither Jeff nor Tom sound very different. In fact, the only real difference is maybe Tom just looking a little more fresh-faced in that particular interview. You know, he says he's excited to get started. It's amazing watching back an interview like that now with the knowledge of everything that then happened for him at Fulham. He talks about in that interview how he knew Ryan Tunnicliffe when he joined the club. I remember Jack being really excited when Tom joined, just thinking like it was a bit of a coup. He was a class player at championship level. We'd obviously struggled the season before. I think we all thought at the time that 15-16 was going to be a positive season for Fulham, where actually we kicked on and chased promotion. We obviously know that is not exactly what happened in that particular campaign. But yeah, I just remember seeing a few highlight reels. I remember Hull and Blackburn fans speaking so positively of him. So he was just one of those players, and sometimes you get this feeling and it doesn't turn out to be a correct premonition. But I just remember thinking, got a good feeling that this Tom Cairney guy might work out to be okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember the season before in 14-15 that TC was one of the most talked about players in the Championship in terms of his talent, in terms of the quality he could bring to Blackburn, and he did bring to Blackburn. And it felt as if at the time when 14-15 finished, Fulham was still a very big fish in the Championship pond. And everyone was like, well, they had a really bad season. They were suffering a hangover from relegation. I reckon, as you say, they're going to kick on next season. Brought in Jamie O'Hara. And then obviously TC comes in as well. And it did feel as if at the time Fulham were still picking off the best of the Championship talent, like we did with Ross McCormack the season before. And TC came in under, of course, Kit Simons at the time. And it felt like a very exciting signing for a very cheap fee. Felt like a sensible piece of business. And yeah, I remember at the time, just like you, Sammy, being very excited by it. Didn't know what to expect in terms of would he play centre mid, would he play out on the wing? He played out on the wing and he played in the 10, obviously progressively at his time at Fulham. But I do remember that first goal he scored against Brighton, the curler into the back of the net. I think we lost 2-1 that day. I think we lost 2-1 that day, yeah. And it was a last-minute penalty for Brighton. But TC's goal was like, oh, okay, it was a good strike. I think came in off the bar, and that sort of announced himself at Craven Cottage, and the rest, of course, is history. But yeah, that first season, despite TC playing very, very well, Fulham were terrible, and we almost got relegated to League One. So it wasn't the season we all have thought, but then obviously 16-17 was where things really started to take off with Fulham, and TC was at the heart of all of that.
Yeah, I feel like, Elizabeth, Tom was an island of class, and actually Fulham's performances that season epitomised where that squad was at. There were very good players within that squad. Tom was one of them. Obviously, we were heavily reliant on Ross McCormack as well, possibly too reliant on Ross McCormack, and that actually might have been as much of a problem as obviously Ross had bailed us out several times that season. But I guess it was kind of one of those starts from Tom. It wasn't emphatic. He scored some really nice goals, particularly that one against Brighton in his first ever home league match. But, he was surrounded by some players. I mean, Jack mentioned him there, Jamie O'Hara, who clearly weren't at the right level for what Fulham needed. But you could just see, I think, that Tom, actually, if there is to be a world where Fulham get back to being okay again, Tom's going to be very much at the heart of it.
Yeah, I felt like he had real moments of control and expression during that time that we weren't seeing in other areas of the pitch, as you allude to. And signing a player at his age profile when we did, he was 24 when we signed him, and obviously didn't really know what to expect, apart from that the clubs that he'd come from had spoken very highly of him. I think it's a very ambitious signing in that sense, because we're signing him before he's reaching his peak. We're signing him and giving the chance to show off, rather than signing someone who's already had their best years. Maybe could have been said for Jamie O'Hara, I don't know. But yeah, definitely a show of intent with that signing for sure. And I think after 15-16, if I'm honest, I wasn't feeling desperately hopeful about Fulham's chances. But as 16-17 started to roll around, it became clear quite how important he was to this side and this side's progress.
Yeah, Jack, I feel like 16-17, when you look back, may have been actually one of Tom's best seasons. I mean, he scored 13 goals. Until I looked back through the stats, I didn't remember him scoring that many. But actually, you look through the goals that he scored that season. I mean, there were some incredible ones. Wolves away from the free kick. Obviously, Leeds at home, incredibly famous. From 30 yards against Newcastle. It was really Tom Cairney on his left foot, the peak era.
Yeah, and even in a season where we missed a ton of penalties, he scored at Huddersfield, he scored at Norwich from the spot as well. I think he may have missed one against Brentford at home on the game we confirmed our playoff spot. But yeah, 16-17 was sort of beginning of peak era Tom Cairney, where we had obviously McDonald and Johansson, and it was just a fabulous midfield. And you think of the Wolves game. I was at that game, where I remember being in the crowd next to my friend Lewis, and the corner was swung into the edge of the box, and he shouted, "What are we doing?" And then he just bangs it in, top bins. That's just such a great goal. And obviously the playoff against Reading, the home game, he scored a header, a very rare TC header.
I love that goal.
Yeah, great goal. Great limbs down in the Hammersmith end. I'll always remember from that 16-17 season, right at the start, Preston away, and that assist for Matt Smith, he just weaved through everyone. And that was where we really started to see him flourish. I felt as if Fulham had a new lease of life. That game against Newcastle on the opening night of the season, it felt so different from the previous two seasons. The Friday night buzz, we won 1-0. We weren't at our best, but we got away with one with a good save from David Button. And it just lifted everyone. And then, of course, we beat Preston, and that fabulous goal against Leeds on the turn away at Leeds, where he sort of rolls his man and curls it into the bottom corner. It was just such a class. I know we didn't go up. I know it was a heartbreaking end, but 16-17 has a load of fond memories for me. And of course, the goal at Blackburn against his former team, last minute of the game, we went into the international break second in the table, and it felt so different from the previous two seasons. 16-17 was very special. TC was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, that left foot, it felt like, Elizabeth, something that Tom slightly lost as his career went on. It almost felt like Tom wanted to shoot less and less, but we saw during that, he it was just almost a cheat code, wasn't it? Put Tom on his left foot, and 9 times out of 10, he will find the kind of far corner. Some of those memories. I forgot about the Preston assist. I mean, it's potentially the easiest goal that Matt Smith's ever scored. I mean, Tom Cairney deserved the goal. He ran past about 7 players, then got clattered, and then Matt Smith just rolled it into an empty net at the second attempt as well. It has to be said. But yeah, I think that was just where you realise, oh my God, you have to be pretty special no matter what league to just kind of consistently bend in long range shots like that.
Oh, yeah. And I had the joy before recording of watching back all of Tom Cairney's goals from that season. I think he also won Player of the Season that year, which doesn't surprise me at all. But I mean, Leeds is the headline one for a reason, I think, from that season. Like from the slight angle outside the box on the left foot, last minute in front of the Hammersmith end, like those kind of memories. We'll come on to more with Tom Cairney over the years, but those kind of memories are what gives you tingles. I wonder whether, like, with the sort of rise of, this is such a generalization, but like pet ball and like not taking low XG chances, players have kind of had it coached out of them to stop trying to hit long range bangers, and therefore Tom Cairney isn't so much. But even this season, when he scored, he was scoring, his first goal this season was a long range banger. So like maybe he should be, allowed to do it and given free rein when he wants to.
We shouldn't actually forget in the 16-17 season, one of the best nights of many Fulham fans' life. I think it was Brentford away when he scored the winning goal, 2-0. Aluko obviously scored the first one, and then obviously we sealed it in the last minute. And obviously the Brentford games at Griffin Park before that, in 15-16, we'd lost 3-0. You're not fit to wear the shirt. Season before, they scored in the last minute to beat us. And yeah, that was a real special moment. But in the Griffin Park, the old Griffin Park away end, I mean, I was flown from pillar to post when that goal went in. I think everyone was. It was a really special memory. And that you think back to all the TC goals, there's so many, but for me, that Brentford away one definitely stands out. It was just absolutely, everyone went berserk in that away end. It was so special.
It was a really skillful goal as well. Like I seem to recall he sat down a Brentford player, then just kind of like rolled it into an empty net. And as you say, Jack, like it's easy to forget now, but like that was peak kind of like painful era against Brentford. You'd had Jota in the last minute. They'd come to Craven Cottage and smashed us. Then, of course, about 6 months before that goal had been the whole "you're not fit to wear the shirt," the awful Jazz Richards disaster class. That was a seismic win. That was such a huge kind of relief. And of course, Sonny Aluko put Fulham ahead, but it was Tom that rounded it off. And actually, you just think back, that season, I think was when Tom almost kind of cemented the era that was to begin, because there was about 5 or 6 outrageously special moments. And as you say, Elizabeth, the Leeds equaliser in the last minute, that was the most frustrating game. I think it might have been a Tim Ream own goal that put Leeds in front, and Leeds time wasted from minute that goal went in, and it was infuriating. Rob Green was taking about 10 years to take every single goal kick, and Leeds fans were reveling in it at the other end. So I remember the sweet relief when that ball hit the back of the net, because Fulham was so on top. It was just a dominant display, but it was going to take a piece of magic to kind of break through that Leeds resistance. And I think Tom, standing on the advertising hoardings and stuff, I think it was the moment where we all realised that Tom would be a special player. Of course, the real moment, I think, where Tom, if he wasn't already a legend, becomes a legend, is in the 17-18 season. But it's easy to forget, Jack, that of course, when we come on to it, he has the moment of that season, potentially one of the great Fulham moments of all time. It wasn't actually the easiest campaign for Tom. He missed several, months of that season through what became quite regular injuries for Tom, and Ollie Norwood had to step into midfield quite a lot that season, and actually played pretty well, scored some pretty important goals. But Tom, Kevin McDonald, Steph Joe midfield, when it was up and running, was almost unplayable in the Championship, right? That they all three of them offered something different. You had the class and finesse of Tom, you had the the running of Steph Johansson and the shithousery, of course, and then just Kevin McDonald, the patroller. It was a joyful midfield trio. Ollie Norwood had his moments, but they were the three that everyone loved, right?
Absolutely. It worked so well under Slavisa, that style of play. And then obviously you have Ryan Fredericks out on the right-hand side. It was such a joy to watch the way we attacked, and we scored so many goals. And I actually think back to that 17-18 season. I'm going through my photo gallery, sort of trying to pick out the goals that he scored. I remember he scored a header against Bolton to save us in the last minute. And that was when we were really struggling. Of course, 17-18, that whole first half of the season, we were down near the bottom. And it was obviously Sunderland away, which was the changing point. We went 23 games unbeaten. And then, of course, within that 23-game unbeaten run, not a load of TC moments stand out to me just sitting here right now. I remember, obviously, he scored at Norwich. And then, that was the whole part of the winding up James Maddison game. And then, of course, the playoff final, how can you forget it? We'll obviously come on to it. The biggest moment in TC's career, I reckon. 17-18 was... I think 17-18 was such a group effort. To get ourselves over the line to be 17th and asking for Slavisa's head basically after Sunderland away, to suddenly turning it around. Like you say, Ollie Norwood coming up with a big goal against Middlesbrough, and Norwood was so good that season for Fulham when TC wasn't playing his part. And and then obviously it came to the end of the season, and that's where Sessegnon stood up and scored Adoy, and then obviously Adoy getting sent off, but obviously TC's goal being the difference against Villa. Best day of my life that day, and TC is the reason for it.
Sessegnon pops up in a central position, skips over one tackle, feeds this forward, Cairney's onside! Cairney scores for Fulham! Rolling it underneath, Jansen, and what a moment that is for the Cottagers! And it's the captain, Tom Cairney, who just made the dash into the penalty area and slid it under the goalkeeper. 22 minutes played at Wembley. What a huge moment that is for Fulham. Fulham 1, Aston Villa 0.
I mean, it's just glorious. Every year, 26th of May, we get the spider cam out. We watched Sessegnon ride through the challenge of Conor Hourihane, play the ball inside John Terry, and Tom Cairney slot it home with ease. There was never any doubt in the finish. It didn't bobble over the line. He knew exactly where it was going. We see him knee slide towards the corner, all the Aston Villa fans in the background looking upset, knowing that probably their chance of going back to the Premier League is done. They like to say that now it was the best thing that ever happened to them, yada, 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 but they didn't think it at the time. It was a huge day for Fulham. Our first trip to Wembley in 40 years, and Tom Cairney at the heart of it, the winning goal. And it was a fitting person to score the winner, right? I always think back to that. It's just like, there was, yes, okay, it could have been a Sessegnon or a Mitro, sure, but Tom Cairney's got that forever. No matter what happens, and I know we'll come on to maybe what Tom could achieve this year, but it'll have to be something really, really special this season to eclipse that moment as the all-time Tom Cairney moment. And it's actually not a very Tom Cairney goal. As we talked about, he loved scoring left-foot long-range bangers, but actually one-on-one against the keeper is not often where you see Tom Cairney. You normally see Tom Cairney making that pass, not being on the receiving end of it. I mean, it will go down as one of the all-time Fulham moments, right? And I think if there is anything that cements his legendary status, it is Wembley, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It felt so fitting that it was him that scored it, considering that he was probably the most key player in pulling us out of those championship doldrums into that position. And like Jack says, it's the best day of his life. I can't really disagree, to be honest. Like, that experience of everyone wearing white being in Wembley, it was so hot that day, and just the emotion. I've never celebrated a goal like it, as in my whole family. Everyone around me has never celebrated a goal like it. Talking about limbs, it wasn't even that. It was just I was hugging everyone left, right and centre, people I'd never met before. It was so special and meaningful. And then for him to be the one, obviously as captain, that lifted the trophy, it felt like the most perfect moment. And you say that maybe this season, if he does something truly spectacular, it could be beaten, but I'm just not sure it could ever. like what that represented to the club, finally back in the Premier League, when, to be honest, at points, and if we hadn't gone up that season, I think we would have sunk back down the table. I think our progression would have halted because we wouldn't have had the finances and we would have lost some key players. I just like what that signifies to the development of the club is so important. I don't think it could ever be beaten.
Yeah, I don't know. Last minute, we were in the Carabao Cup final, Elizabeth. It could be.
Of course, it's the Carabao.
Yeah. Oh well, I'll take the FA Cup if that's what it has to be. Of course, Jack. I remember though that season again. Like it wasn't the easiest for Tom. He was made club captain at the start of it. Scott Parker had left. It was a bit of a controversial call, and I think some thought at the time it might have actually been something to try and keep Tom Cairney sweet. It was about the time where lots of clubs were interested in signing him. There was long-standing rumours that West Ham were interested in signing Tom. And I think immediately it wasn't an instant fit, Tom being club captain. It was a bit weird given that Kevin McDonald's the natural leader of that dressing room, right? He was the charisma, and you could just tell that Kevin was the real leader on the pitch. And Tom, for all his qualities, didn't feel like a natural leader. It felt like Tom sometimes would get in his own head and struggle to lift his own performance, let alone try and lift the performances of others around him. And, I remember on Fulhamish, we talked about times where Tom Cairney would walk straight down the tunnel after matches because he was upset that Fulham lost. And it was understandable, right? He was maturing as a player and I think was struggling to deal with the emotions of it all. Tom Cairney at 34 wouldn't do that anymore. Tom's matured. But I think, I don't think that captaincy was something that came naturally to Tom, which is hard to say now because he feels like the absolute most natural captain that there ever could be of the football club.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that, the reason I think he was given that captain's armband was because of the progression not only he had made over the last couple of years, but the whole club had made. And it basically was all stemmed basically through him. A lot of his goals, his creativity, we got to a stage where we were in the doldrums, Bristol City scoring against us in the last minute and thinking we're going to League One, to, oh gosh, we're in the playoffs and now you're scoring in the playoffs and levelling the game against Reading. And then I also think about the second leg against Reading when we lost, where he was the one sort of almost in tears in front of the Fulham fans, clapping the fans and that sort of, it feels as if he fell in love with the club as quickly as we fell in love with him. And it felt like out of all the players that were in the squad at the time, when he got given the captain's armband, he was the one that was the most affiliated with the club. And it felt as if that maybe was the reason why he got the armband. He became Mr. Fulham very, very quickly. He got the club. He understood everything about the club and the fans and stuff, and what we've been through and the trajectory that we got up to that point. And I think that's maybe he wasn't the natural leader at the time. Like you say, McDonald would have been the complete shoo-in, but I don't think it was a bad decision. I don't think it was the wrong decision. I thought it was just a difficult decision, if anything. You've got a championship team that could have 2-3 different captains. Tim Ream, Thomas Callas could have been captain. I know he's sort of on loan as well, so that might have not made sense. Or maybe he wasn't on loan. I can't quite remember. Anyway, I think TC was a good captain's choice. And then, of course, in hindsight, scoring the winning goal at Wembley and taking us up, lifting the trophy, it's picturesque, and I think that no one's going to begrudge that, and no one probably did begrudge it at the time. It was just an interesting topic of conversation. But TC for me always is going to be Mr. Fulham.
Yeah. I mean, 18-19, Elizabeth, was obviously an incredibly tough season for Fulham. And Tom found it difficult, right? We made all of those signings and it really impacted his area of the pitch, because I think the two most controversial signings that season were Seri and Anguissa in the middle, and Fulham just didn't know what they were doing in the middle of the park, and it was the area of the pitch we were just getting torn apart. We tried to play Seri and Cairney together and it just never worked, did it? And I think, Tom can take some of the blame. I don't think sometimes his performances were fully up to scratch in the Premier League, but he was also between a rock and a hard place, and I think we felt like Kevin McDonald couldn't be trusted at Premier League level. I always think in hindsight, I'd have loved to have seen one season of us actually trusting Cairney, Steph Joe, Kevin McDonald. Easy to say with the power of hindsight, of course, but it would have surely done no worse than the kind of weird Anguissa, Seri, sometimes Cairney midfield that we tried. It just had no backbone, and I think teams just found it very easy to play against us.
Yeah, did those three ever play together in the Premier League?
Probably not.
I feel like maybe they didn't. And I mean, it's the age-old question when you go up to the Premier League, and like, it's why so many teams struggle. Do you trust in the excellent players that got you there, and trust that upsetting the apple cart will be not upsetting the apple cart will be a better option? You'll be able to maintain stability, and you believe in them, or do you upgrade in those positions and bring in new players? Towards the end of that 17-18 season, it felt like we were unstoppable, and I was like personally disappointed not to see that midfield trio come together in the Premier League. In terms of Tom's performances that season, the only like standout moment that I remember in a good sense was the Everton goal just after he'd had his first baby. And that was a beautiful goal. That was a beautiful Tom Cairney day, and a beautiful strike. But obviously after we were relegated, so the ship had already sailed very much by that point.
Yeah. And I mean, also, Jack, like, again, injuries hampered him, right? He didn't play all the time that season, and we were messing around so much, right? We had 3 different managers in one season, and it was actually Scott Parker who came back in and saw a future for Tom Cairney. You know, there's a lot of criticism, rightly so, of Scott Parker and his time at Fulham, but actually Scott really believed in Tom. And then in the following season, where we eventually got promoted via the playoffs, the 1920 season, it was actually Tom's that's the most amount of starts he made in a season. He started 41 times, he scored 8 goals, ultimately lifted the playoff trophy at Wembley after Joe Bryan's double in the final against Brentford. But from minute one, Tom Cairney was a Scott Parker player, and actually he really believed in him and actually gave him a lease of life, because that whole 18-19 season had just been a bit of a struggle for Tom.
To give Parker his credit, then yes, I think he revived TC and what was actually a relationship between maybe the fans and TC, the club and TC, where it was at its most rocky. Southampton away, 2-0 defeat the day before Ranieri was sacked. I was stood, I think, just in front of TC's mum, I think, or parents or brother at least. And he was playing in a very, very strange position. I think he might have been like a second striker with Abu Kamara. And I think he got subbed. And I sort of just remember clapping and like looking around and saw his parents. They were just like shaking their head. They didn't know what was going on in terms of what Ranieri was doing as a manager or you know, the role on the pitch that TC was playing. I thought it was a tremendously difficult season. I thought Fulham were incredibly naive when they came up and didn't really stick to what they were doing the previous season. I actually think Slavisa, when he got sacked, was a little bit too soon after the Liverpool game. I thought that was a game, again, where we scored, it was onside, they gave offside, they played on without the ball. The ball was still moving, Salah scored, and then we lost 2-0. But anyway, going back to TC, obviously the Everton goal, like you say, Elizabeth, was fantastic. Got to interview him after Spurs away, which was fantastic, on the fan cams. Just the second fan cam of the season, we managed to get TC, thanks to Luke, my brother, fantastic, for his drunken bravery for that. But yeah, going into 18-19, you know, straight off the bat, TC against Blackburn, you know, after the defeat to Barnsley, but against Blackburn, what a goal. And then, of course, scored a wonderful goal against Wigan. That season's a bit blurry for me, because obviously that's when lockdown, so everything sort of stopped for a little bit. But 18-19, wait, I'm losing track. 18-19?
1920.
1920, excuse me. That was a great season for TC. Obviously played in the playoff final, was brilliant in the playoff final against Brentford, where we won. Joe Bryan was obviously the star, but TC played his part and lifted the trophy, a second promotion for TC. And yeah, Scott Parker, to his credit, did revive the career of Tom Cairney and made him TC was back, sort of, because you had a season where he was absent for a lot of the time. He wasn't playing enough games. We were almost basically relegated throughout the whole season. Basically, everyone knew we were going back down, and to then be on a promotion charge in the Championship where TC sort of running the show is what Fulham fans wanted to see.
Yeah, and Elizabeth, it was actually a little bit of a positional change, I think, because I think when Tom Cairney arrived, it was never 100% clear what Tom's best position was. He was kind of a 10, sometimes on the left wing. I generally always saw him as a bit of a 10, but I think it's when Parker arrived that actually Tom Cairney went deeper and Harrison Reed was the 6 and Tom Cairney was kind of the 8. He was given license to pick passes, to start moves rather than necessarily be the creative force, which is possibly a reason why also his amount of long shots dipped, as well as the kind of recent trends of football. Josh Onomah played a lot of times at number 10 that season. A real blast from the past to think about Josh Onomah playing with Tom Cairney now. And it was actually that relationship with Harrison Reed really was fruitful. And actually they played some brilliant football together, both that season and then the subsequent promotion season under Marco Silva. So it was a little bit of a reinvention for Tom. I felt like that was actually where he started to realise the exact kind of player he was. Whereas I always think beforehand, yes, he scored some amazing goals. He was just kind of everywhere and during that 16-17 season. It was wonderful to see him kind of like stroll about the pitch with no responsibility, just have shots. But actually, he took a little bit more leadership role and a little bit more of a back seat within the midfield during that promotion season.
Yeah, I thought Harrison Reed and Tom Cairney, like that partnership was at its best during that season in terms of what we were seeing on the pitch. I feel like the 2 seasons on the promotion season under Marco, I feel like that was maybe Harrison Reed's best season, but Cairney, well, I mean, we'll come on to it. But I remember being like absolutely desperate to secure Harrison Reed and thinking that Cairney was at his absolute prime at like 28, 29 that season. He definitely was in a footballing sense. And being given, for all my negative opinions about Scott Parker, of which there are many, and I'm sure we'll come on to his Premier League season, but for all of that, giving Tom Cairney the ability and the permission to patrol the ball, to be a little bit more controlling on the ball rather than this like super attacking number 10, definitely I think played to TC's strength, especially in the Championship when we were playing a calibre of opposition that was generally worse than us. It meant that he was able to control a lot of those games from the centre of the park.
The 25-26 season is shaping up to be a big one for Fulham, and one thing you need ahead of it is NordVPN, the fastest VPN on the planet that allows you to watch football matches from wherever you are in the world on either your phone, your tablet, or your laptop. For instance, you could use NordVPN to watch Premier League matches for a fraction of the price, including those 3 p.m. kickoffs that aren't available in this country. Or if you go on holiday this summer, you can use NordVPN to access your UK TV subscriptions. And right now, you can use NordVPN on up to 10 devices, which means you can share the amazing benefits that NordVPN has with your family or your friends. And you can get a great deal when you sign up to NordVPN at nordvpn.com/Fulhamish. Not only will you get a huge discount, but you'll also get 4 months extra as well. And it's entirely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So to get that special discount plus 4 free months, go to nordvpn.com/Fulhamish. That's nordvpn.com/Fulhamish. We get promoted. It's the lockdown season. Obviously, arguably a tougher season to follow Fulham than even the previous Premier League season. I think just, there were a few more highlights. We did manage to get more points, but maybe also the fact that we were locked away in our houses and we had to watch us score no goals at Craven Cottage made it tough. But of course, this is when TC's worst injury kicked in, the knee injury that kind of still follows Tom around today. That was a really, really serious injury. 10 months he missed in toto. So pretty much the whole of that lockdown season, Tom really missed. Once again, we kind of made the same mistake as before, trying to bring in midfielders who didn't really fit. Obviously, that was the Ruben Loftus-Cheek season. But of course, it was really the injury that stops Tom being a part of that side. And in lots of ways, you can hardly say that relegation was in any way Tom's fault, given the fact that he barely played. And then Marco Silva is taken over by this point, and Marco has to start the season without Tom. He's not available until he returns against Cardiff at home, and this happened.
What Marco Silva decides to do, but here's Harry Wilson picking out Bobby Dekker over Reed. Dennis Adoy goes on the overlap. Bobby back for Harry Wilson inside the box. Oh, well, he felt he was not. I've done it! The loose ball falls in front of Tom Cairney, and you couldn't make it up. Don't jump all over him, for God's sake. Well, he spanked it with a left foot.
Wow.
That's exactly what we wanted to see. Harry Wilson went on the run into the box, trying to get the shot away. He couldn't find a way through. The loose ball came out to Tom Cairney, and he showed everyone inside Craven Cottage exactly what he's capable of and what he can do with his left foot.
I mean, Elizabeth, I think, obviously, yes, Villa will be my favourite Tom Cairney moment. It'll be everyone's favourite Tom Cairney moment. But this is low-key my favourite Tom Cairney moment. It goes down in history as a fairly routine 2-0 win over Cardiff. But at the time, that goal meant so much. To see Tom come back and to score such a brilliant and important goal. We were struggling against this Cardiff side. It hadn't been plain sailing. It was 0-0 at half-time, and they'd had some chances to go into the lead. It's just amazing. And the emotion, I think, is one of the most emotional moments I can remember at Fulham in the last kind of 5-6 years. It really was special.
Yeah, so emotional, and like the rain lashing down added to the sort of emotion of it for sure. It felt very dramatic. And obviously, and then as soon as he scores, he's burying his face in his hand as he's in tears because it had been so long. And I remember the 10 months before that, it felt like every month or two we were getting Scott Parker saying, oh, he's really close. And then Marco Silva saying, oh, he'll be back like really soon. And oh, he's even a maybe for this weekend, and then we'd have another setback and another setback and another setback. And I genuinely thought at some points like we're never, ever, ever going to see Tom Cairney again. That's really how I felt. And maybe that was dramatic, but like to have it teased to us so much. And then when he did come back to score like that, and like that was such an important win within the context of our championship season. Like Cardiff at the time, the rivalry that we'd had with them a couple of years previously when we were both fighting promotion was a little bit dead, but they were still a decent team at that point. And yeah, I just don't think I'll ever forget that goal, like in the rain pouring down from Craven Cottage. And even thinking about it, I feel like a little bit of tears in my eyes like Tom was that day.
Yeah, and Jack, it meant that Tom kind of came back into that side. Obviously, it was a glorious season, right? It must have been so much fun to be part of the Fulham team that year. And whilst Tom very much had a stop-start kind of role, he never fully integrated himself into that first team. He did start to get more starts, a few sub-appearances here and there. He scored the first goal in the 7-0 win over Luton, which is when we sealed the championship. Marco started to trust him more and more. And I guess it was that season that maybe led to the Tom Cairney role that we know now, because I think Marco realised, oh, wow, this is a really useful asset to have, actually. This guy can really control a midfield and offers me something different that I don't have in amongst all the other midfield options.
I love the fact that you see a lot of examples of players who, as they mature and as they get older, they realise, their manager realises that they can't do the things that they used to do, and they can play a different role, which is just as impactful and almost a little bit more sensible, a little bit more conservative, but still makes a difference on the pitch. You think of Wayne Rooney dropping into midfield, players like that. And you know, the 100th goal scored by TC, it had to be him. It had to be him to get the 100th goal. And obviously Mitro went on to get his moments in that game as well and have his own records. It was such a special night for so many reasons. And then obviously he lifts the trophy, yet again, a third trophy to lift at Fulham. Absolutely fantastic. And yeah, that sort of role where he can play a bit part and come off the bench and do bits and still make an impact on the game. It was the perfect role for TC and under Marco Silva, who managed him so brilliantly as well when he came back from injury. Because we had so much talent in that midfield. Reed, Seri, Carvalho. It was almost like TC was just edging his way back in and didn't need to be rushed back or anything like that. We had Harry Wilson, Cabana, Mitrovic, so many goals in the team. And the role he's playing now and the role he's played in the last 3 years has just been so wonderful, where we haven't had to push him too much, and he's still making a difference. He's still playing very well. There's been games where, of course, he's been off the pace a little bit. But of course, that's naturally going to happen when you're not playing as much football. But he's aged like a fine wine in terms of his maturity, his relationship with the club, just the way he interacts with people at the club and the fans. It's just beautiful. And yeah, that promotion season under Marco Silva was very, very special. You think of the 7-0 win against Reading as well. And then you think of the 4-1 win at Reading under Parker, and then you compare that to that photo, like I said earlier, of him in front of the fans after that playoff semi-final defeat, where he's basically crying in front of the fans, and he gets this moment in front of the Fulham fans at the Majeski Stadium where it's all flipped on the other way, and Fulham have got the victory, and it's all smiles. And again, it just epitomises that sort of trajectory that he's been on throughout his time at the club, and I just absolutely adore him, and the role he's got now and the role he's had in the last 3 years has been absolutely perfect.
Yeah, I mean, I find it really unique, Elizabeth. Like, I cannot think, and I'm sure there is one or two examples of it in football, but I can't think of a Premier League player who's done 3 seasons making almost 3 times the amount of substitute appearances as starts. It was one of those where I felt like, for sentimental reasons, we all wanted Tom Cairney to stay at Fulham, right? And we all knew that he had the quality, but maybe if, we were getting promoted and we were being realistic, does Tom Cairney still fit into this Fulham team? He's had a serious knee injury. If he couldn't do 90 minutes in the Championship, is he going to be able to do 90 minutes in the Premier League, which has only got tougher since when he first was playing there? And Marco just found this role for him. And I remember at the start thinking, okay, he's not going to bring on Tom Cairney every single match, is he? But in that first season, it pretty much was a 100% appearance rate in terms of nearly every Premier League game Tom Cairney played in it. And nearly every one of them, it was from the substitutes bench, which must be frustrating for Tom, because I'm sure he feels, actually, I can start, I can offer things. And actually those moments where he has been trusted to get a start, there has been a few spells where actually Tom has had a role in this team. But obviously the sub role is what he's become known for. And he just excels in it, which is obviously a dilemma for Tom, because it must be frustrating to be known as an impact sub when obviously all footballers want to start. But at the same time, what it's allowed Tom, and I think the only thing hanging over him, I think, on that third promotion was, okay, you've got 3 promotions, you've never quite cut it in the Premier League. He wants to be known as a player that was able to mix it amongst the best. And I think we know that Tom Cairney had it within him to mix it amongst the best. So it's great that Marco Silva has been able to cultivate that role for Tom, where actually he can, if nothing else happens in this career, Tom Cairney can say, no, I was Premier League level, because he's proven it in these last 3 years, even if it's in a bit of a weird role that maybe isn't what he'd have dreamt of.
Yeah, for sure. If we were still in that yo-yo spiral with our manager and sacking managers up and down from the Premier League, Tom Cairney wouldn't be the right man to be leading this club, and he wouldn't be the right player to be investing in. Because of, obviously he has impact, but he's no more is he like a stable starter, which is absolutely natural with his age. When you were saying can you think of any other players that have had this? I'm thinking about the James Milners, for example, of clubs, the elder statesmen who have such a sort of golden reputation because of everything they've done in the game, but are not quite able to cut it and get 90 minutes yet. But when they do come on, often these players, maybe not so much James Milner anymore, but often these players are able to do something really magical and really special. And we've seen that with Tom Cairney even this season. And obviously there have been goals throughout his time in the Premier League, but this season the one that really stands out to me is the Spurs away cameo, where he scored an absolute banger, ran over to us, thumped his chest and the badge, and then just sort of put this
It
absolutely horrific 2-foot tackle on, I think it was Dejan Kulusevski.
It was, it was, yeah.
Yeah, get sent off, which was hilarious. Yeah, I mean, I just think you wrote a really wonderful piece about this, Sammy, this morning. And if you guys haven't read it, I'd really recommend checking it out, where you spoke about how sentimentality is often disparaged in football. But in this case, I think it is a decision that does make sense with our heads. We know the impact that he can have off the bench. We know he can't play 90 minutes, but if he can play 15 and assist a goal or score a goal, that is equally valuable in so many ways. But also the emotional thing of this is the one person probably that we can say that brought us from the Championship doldrums, where it looked like we were looking down rather than up, to Premier League stability, obviously touch wood. Like in this era of us in the Premier League, sort of the third bite of the cherry for it, I don't ever want to see him go.
Yeah, and obviously that day will come, and he even acknowledged that in the interview that he did with the club yesterday, Jack, and he said he's got unfinished business, and obviously he was referring to Fulham. He said get to a cup final. Obviously, I'm sure he means get to a cup final and win it, but he is right that is almost just the one thing that I think Tom would love to do, even if, none of us want to get to a cup final and lose, right? But at the same time, we've had 3 seasons where there have been painful cup exits. And I think Tom talked, because Tom knows, right, that this is the chance for him to get silverware. And I think I couldn't help but when I watched Joel Ward win the FA Cup, just think, how magic would it be if Tom Cairney kind of had that moment for Fulham? And look, a lot of things have to go right. And obviously Tom maybe won't be a key part of it, but nor was Joel Ward, right? It's not like Joel Ward was the one that really won the FA Cup for Crystal Palace, but he was able to have that moment and leave on a high. I guess that's the optimum ending, isn't it? But I think it doesn't mean, even if that doesn't happen, that Tom Cairney hasn't been a resounding success at Fulham. And to complete 10 years, I just... will we see this again? Like, will we actually, it took from the 90s with Simon Morgan for there to be a 10-year player at Fulham. I guess someone like Kenny Tete is currently the closest, and I can't quite see Kenny getting to 10. And even if Kenny does get to 10, is it going to be quite as iconic as the way that Tom Cairney got to 10, from the way that Tom Cairney was there right at the bottom, at the lowest ebb, the defeat to Bristol City, looking like we're going to League One. If he leaves on a high, it's the ultimate Fulham story.
Yeah. Look, the cherry on top would be a trophy, would be a cup final or a cup semi-final. Just another appearance at Wembley, I think, would be fantastic. And whatever happens, he's already got hero status. He's already got people calling for a statue, testimonial, stuff like that. And could we see it again? Josh King? You never know. I mean, that's a tall order. That's a big ask, but you never know. But yeah, this has been, a really poignant 10 years. I remember speaking with you last year when Tim Ream left, and it was obviously a very big moment for us. But this is just on another level. I think TC is. He's shown us all sides of him. He's shown us his personal side, his family. We've got to know his family, over social media and stuff like that. And we got to see him on the pitch. And he speaks to so many fans off the pitch, after games and stuff like that. Stays behind and talks to people. And I just think it's such a special relationship. It's almost as if he should have a stand name after him, when he leaves Fulham. I think it's that sort of situation, because it is so unique. It is so special. I'm quite emotional about the whole thing, actually, because I think this last few weeks have been quite difficult, because I don't think any Fulham fan would have accepted the City game being it, the lap of honour being the final straw of the relationship between Fulham and TC. I couldn't accept that. I don't think any Fulham fan would have accepted that. It doesn't matter how many games he plays next season, how many minutes he gets next season. I think it was important that we get a goodbye that we know is coming, that we can prepare for, because it's been the most magical relationship with a player that I've ever seen at Fulham, and I think that he deserves that send off. And we're so lucky to have him for one more year. And to go back to your original point, to have a Wembley semi-final, a Wembley final, a cup final, win a trophy, Carabao Cup, FA Cup, with TC lifting the trophy. I don't think anyone would be able to recover from that emotionally, because it would be incredible. It would be incredible, and it would be very poignant, and it would be very TC, and it'd be a fitting end to what has been a romantic and unbelievable journey and relationship between club and TC.
Yeah. And I mean, Jack, maybe it's not a whole stand, but now we've got the new Riverside, the Fulham Pier. There's plenty of assets that could become a Tom Cairney, the Tom Cairney swimming pool. There could be a Tom Cairney. They've got some quite generic names, haven't they? Like the Dugout and the Gourmet. Surely it could be the Cairney or something like that. There's got to be something that we can put Tom's name to. And Elizabeth, none of us exactly know what Tom's going to do next, but he has really flirted with the idea of punditry. It does feel like a natural fit. I actually think that Tom's got enough in him to be a host. Like I don't know why, but I feel like he's got Gary Lineker, David Prutton. I feel like within him, but it's up to Tom what he does next. But I think whatever it is, assuming it is punditry, maybe he might dabble in coaching, but it seems like he's going more down the TV route. I think that will mean that Tom is associated with Fulham almost forever, right? I just have this feeling that I think Steve Sidwell and Mark Schwarzer are the kind of current go-to, we need a Fulham player, get them on. But TC, he will be, for me, the man that is always booked for Fulham games in the future. I feel like that association between him and the club will remain for a long time. I almost don't want him to manage Fulham in some ways, because you don't want that to be tarnished, and it can, sadly, that can happen occasionally when heroed ex-players come and manage Fulham and do a terrible job, and then you've got a bit of a sour relationship. I almost want that not to happen with Tom. Just please, just stay on the sidelines and be a hero forever.
Yeah, I don't see him becoming a coach personally at all. I think he's shown a number of times that he's gone on Sky a fair bit. He's done a fair bit of punditry stuff already while he's still playing. And while he's on, he is very charming and funny and personable, which cannot be said for all players that are appearing on Sky for sure. So I just don't see a future where he's not snapped up in that role. He's played loads in the Championship, loads in the Premier League. He can cover all sorts of games from that perspective. And you're right, he will be Mr. Fulham on punditry, but that doesn't mean that he won't be able to talk about the game in other ways. But it will be exciting, and really, I look forward to us playing, Arsenal on Sky at 2 p.m. on a Sunday, and it being him representing Fulham and being the Fulham voice during that. Especially, I hope in the few years after he retires from football, that will be really, really good to see.
Yeah, and a nice sharp suit in that TV studio in the Riverside. He's born to do it, isn't he? I mean, one surprising thing about Tom's career, Jack, I think, on a side note, is international career. Never quite happened for him, and never really 100% sure why. Obviously, he was born in England. He chose to represent Scotland. He's got 2 caps for Scotland. And look, I know that the Scotland team has improved in recent years, and there's some good midfielders actually in there. And actually, Scotland's always kind of had good midfielders. It's maybe some of the positions around that have been Scotland's downfall over the years. I never knew if it was Scotland's decision or Tom's decision not to play very much internationally. In lots of ways, it's probably helped with the longevity in his domestic career, the fact that he didn't play so many times for Scotland. I guess maybe it would be one for when Tom retires to ask that question of did you regret not playing a little bit more international football? Because he could have.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think at the time when he was hitting peak form in 2018, I think that he would have slotted into that midfield for Scotland quite easily. And I remember him getting the 2 caps and being so confused as to why he wasn't called up in. I can't actually remember who was the manager at the time. It might have been Gordon Strachan. Don't quote me on that, but I was confused as to why he didn't get a big run out as a Scotland player. Of course, it benefits Fulham because you're playing less minutes and you're there for the international breaks to train and stuff, and it helps Fulham in terms of the games going forward from there. But yeah, really confusing. Obviously, he was born in Nottingham and has obviously an affiliation with Scotland, but confusing. I mean, he would have lasted for 2, 3, 4 years for sure before Scotland, really started to come on with McTominay and Billy Gilmore and players like that. But there was a place for him. I seem to remember that there was a manager, and I can't even remember who it was now, that just refused to pick him. And I don't know why, because he's got the talent. And look, if he was playing in that midfield, who knows what Scotland would have been able to achieve. But a strange one, but obviously one that benefits Fulham, so I'm not going to be losing any sleep over it. But TC might.
Yeah, maybe. Or I always did wonder, though. I never felt like, was TC that bothered? You just wonder, don't you?
Yeah.
And actually, like, was playing for Scotland really his dream? If maybe he realised that England wasn't going to happen for many reasons. He was in the Championship, and obviously getting into the England team is much tougher than getting into the Scotland team. It's definitely one that I think would be an appropriate question for someone to ask Tom post career, right? It would be interesting to get that lowdown of exactly what happened with Tom's international career, because as you say, he definitely at certain points during it had more than enough ability to get at least in the Scotland squad. That was the thing. Sometimes wasn't even in the squad or the subs bench, let alone in the starting 11. I mean, we asked the Fulhamish Telegram group for favourite Tom Cairney moments. I'll read a few out in a bit. I'm going to say that you can't say Wembley because that's too easy. But Elizabeth, if you had to have one you're on a desert island, you're only allowed one Tom Cairney goal, which one would it be?
Definitely be my luxury item if I was going to a desert island. It's the Cardiff goal for me, coming back after injury. He was the player that I'd got on my shirt the season before, and then he'd had that 10-month injury, and it's my favourite Fulham player, and will be until he retires. And just the emotion of that day and that goal, and knowing that he was finally back and his emotion on the pitch. Yeah, it is that.
Yeah. Jack?
It's so difficult to pick. But I think personally, given what I went through with that individual goal, it's got to be the Leeds equaliser for me. Like, it's interesting to say that because obviously it only equated into a point. It was a draw. But Leeds had frustrated us all game. Cabana had scored, the ball went over the line, there was no goal line technology. And I was so ill, I was so sick, I had like flu, and I was like walking down, like trudging down the Hammersmith end, like, as like the seats start to empty and you find yourself at a different seat. I was just like, I'm just going to go to the exits, and he scored, and I think I was by myself. I just ran down the road, just absolutely going mental, and then came out the ground and just vomited loads of phlegm up. It was horrible. But TC was, that goal was fantastic. The way it sort of just fell to him on his left foot, it was just absolutely pinged it. And then only a few days later, he goes to Newcastle and scores an amazing goal again at Newcastle. But the one against Leeds for me will live long in the memory. It was just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think those two for me. But if I had to just put in a devil's advocate third choice, the goal against Brentford this year at G-Tech was so magic. And it was just, I think also Tom, and he's done this several times over his career at Fulham, just proving a few people wrong. Because I think we were all worried when he came on at halftime. We were 2-1 down, and I personally didn't massively see the logic of that substitution. We'd seen what happened at Chelsea a few weeks earlier where the TC cameo did not work. And I was worried. We were 2-1 down, and the season was really looking a bit dark at that point. I think to lose that game, and at the time we thought that it might mean that Brentford would get Europe, and we put a lot of faith and trust in Tom and in Josh King, who also came on in that game. But actually to score that header and then for the game to turn around on a sixpence with Harry Wilson's goal a moment later, Tom Cairney on Bassey and Iwobi's shoulders was just so magic. So like, yes, of course, I think those early formative memories in 16-17 and the Cardiff goal are the clear ones, but I just have to add that in because it was magic to still see Tom, and also to prove a few of us wrong who maybe thought that actually bringing on Tom Cairney wasn't the best option. We have mentioned a lot of the ones actually that were in the Telegram, but there are a couple of funny moments that I thought were worth mentioning. Sarah Keeg, who said pulling his shorts down against Newcastle, which I had actually completely forgotten about. Funny. But a really iconic / quite weird Tom Cairney moment where he did that. And also, can anyone remember the windscreen banter between TC and Alexander Mitrovic? Abbas Malik on the Telegram suggested that one as well. And Jack, that is just symbolic of Tom's relationship within the club. I feel like everyone at that football club loves Tom Cairney.
Everyone loves him. You can tell he's got a certain aura, a certain presence around him. I was sat in the room quite nervously waiting for him to interview him last season. He comes in, beaming smile, shakes your hand, asks how you are, like very, very nice. And he gets along very well with the Fulham staff as well. Everyone, he's been there for such a long time. He's made so many relationships with people around the club. Just one funny TC moment from me. I wasn't even there. I was already out the ground because my head was gone. But the corner kick against Crawley, where he just
God, so good,
terrible. But look, the fact of the matter is, he can laugh about these situations. There's so many positives. There's hardly any negatives. And for me, he is the perfect encapsulation of what Fulham is about, and that is, a great family man and also a great footballer.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do for this episode of Fulham Folklore, an emergency Fulham Folklore, but much needed because, you can't have your talismanic 10-year captain signing a contract and not do a quick emergency podcast about it. The Thursday Club will be back later this week with myself and Jack Collins, hopefully with a little bit more to talk about rather than just a contract renewal, but we will wait and see. Elizabeth, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been an absolute delight.
And Jack Kelly, thank you very much.
Thank you. There ain't nobody like Tom Cairney.
Yeah, exactly. Jack and Joe Show will return next week, hopefully with some more transfer rumours. Until then, have a good one. You Whites.